I want to hear you talk about skillful vulnerability because it's not the same words I would use to talk about the same thing, I think. And I'm quite curious to pick your brain a bit on how you see this. And maybe, yeah, just see if it makes sense for me to add my thinking, which is likely with some different words. So I would like you to start talking about just what it looks like for you.
Yeah, I think what I will start talking about is what it looks like when it's not skillful, because I think that's where it's like that's what has made me think of it as a thing to learn how to be vulnerable in a skillful way. Because you can be, well, let's start with vulnerable is what does that even mean? But I think what I mean by vulnerable is being, or like sharing what is true. Well, basically that, but it's not always vulnerable to share what's true. So it's like sharing what's true, even though it feels like it might go wrong, or there's some resistance to it. That's where it feels vulnerable. Like it's not vulnerable to lie, and it's not vulnerable to say some things when there's nothing at stake. But when it's true and there's something at stake, then it's like this is vulnerable. So there's a common misconception, I think, that vulnerability has to do with being small and weak, or like easily damaged. But but I don't. That's not how I see it. You can be happy and big and that's, for me, that's very vulnerable. There's something with that scares me, and that's beside this conversation to psychoanalyze that. But just to say that vulnerability is this, and there's the thing that something is at stake, which can create this kind of like almost like a pressure, and you can feel. I think this is where it's also easy to be mistaken with what's vulnerable. Some people, or a thing that I see again and again in circling, is somebody feeling this. There's like an impulse to say something because of a pressure, and it's kind of true in a way, but it's more like a thing that's forbidden to say than that it's really important to say it. And there's like this strong sense of shame, and then to try to like, oh, this is a practice where we're honest, or like, oh, this, I want to be free. So then you like blurt it out or like say a thing, and then lots of stuff happens around you, because this pressure it wasn't just your own imagination. There are like a lot of taboos and social conventions and like social maneuvering, and like, I don't know, like it's easy to create a lot of turmoil or tumultuous energy in a space by saying the wrong thing. And I think that's one thing that is easily mistaken for vulnerability, saying a thing that provokes your own shame response. That isn't actually an attunement. So one of the skillful things is not doing that, but like sensing in, what is the truth here? Oh, there's a thing. Maybe it's like an easy experience would be like thinking that somebody is attractive or stupid, or like some kind of like charged situation, and oh and then revealing the shame and the tension and the like fear. So like I think the skillful way of being vulnerable for me is usually pausing to sense what's going on, and then see what's the resistance to say it, and sensing like is there a wisdom in the resistance? Am I resisting because it will be damaging to our relationship? Okay, now we have a larger context. Can I bring that I'm hesitating to say a thing because I value the relationship? Is there still resistance? Is there like a larger thing? And it's so far, I don't think I have any counterexamples to my belief that you can always deepen or widen the context sufficiently to say a vulnerable thing that is true and stay in connection. I think there's always a widening or a deepening. I'm not sure what the difference is, but I feel different, which allows you to say the thing that is true right now. It's just like a bigger and bigger and bigger truth.
Is your sense, how to ask that? I can say my sense is that I went through a phase where there was a lot of widening and deepening going on. And it had this, I want to say this thing, but there's something in the way. Then I reveal what's in the way. And then there's more stuff that might be in the way. And I reveal that. And sometimes it became pretty long-winded. And like there's all of this stuff going on in me, apparently. And that was lovely. And I had a good time with that. Lovely, vulnerable, connective, awkward, alive. But then at some point I started noticing that it was kind of performative to do that, and it had this. It actually did not feel skillfully vulnerable anymore. It felt more like a sort of a bit of an artificial doing. And I had this like, but I'm already in touch with the width and the depth. And when I'm in touch with it, I seem to be able to speak more directly. And I don't actually have to do all the context stuff because somehow the context is embedded energetically, in lack of better words, in what I'm saying. So it's like, if it's not charged anymore in me, it doesn't actually come out as charged, even though the words might be not perfect or tell the full story.
Yeah, I think subtextually is maybe better than, well, most people understand energetically, but I think it's basically the same as subtext in a way, or a specific area of subtext. Yeah, I really recognize the whole arc that you're describing, and I don't think it's something you can skip. Yeah, I think it's at your own peril that you try to skip that. Because I think what happens is that you learn to presence that whole thing, and I think and I don't know if it's like within that process or it's a parallel process that happens in these things. You, the general person, learns to be less conflict avoidant. And so bringing a scary thing and then being like, this is very different than bringing a scary thing and being like, and how is that going to be received? And then be there with the person. That's also subtext that gets picked up, whether you notice it or not, that you're doing it.
For sure. Yeah, there's such a difference between what I would call like throwing truth at people, which often has that quality of like, this is what I think about you, and then moving away from the person, often physically, actually. Like you'll see that there's like a move away, and then just showing up in a way where it's like, I want to be in contact. It's like, in some ways, it's very connected to boundaries for me. Like, I am here with you, and I want you to meet me where I am. And this is my best go at the truth of what's here between us. Come and meet me, please. I'm going to stay here. Which is so touching when people do that, I find. It really touches something young in me that's like, oh, you actually want to be with me in something that's difficult for you or for both of us. So like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think boundaries, as you're mentioning, is also, it's an important part of skillful vulnerability. I think showing your own boundaries seems to be one of the most vulnerable things people do. Like, what do I really want, and what do I not want with you right now? Touches on all the there's the risk of being rejected, and there's the risk of not being rejected. Both can feel quite scary.
Yeah.
Or like, sometimes I think I want something, and then there's not a boundary, and then I feel like I'm like, whoa, maybe this wasn't actually what I wanted.
Yeah, like suddenly there's intimacy.
Yeah, now maybe if I'm like pushing in one direction because I want to go there, and there's no stop, then maybe I'm like starting to go farther than I wanted, and now I have to be the one to reject, and that's also super vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah, I like this, like getting into talking about the like boundary as vulnerability, as I guess as opposed to vulnerability understood as I have to show something that hurts, which I think is something that shows up quite often in relating practices. That is like, particularly in birthday circling, find out that when someone is being circled, there's often this sense of an obligation of showing something that's dirty or painful, or that when people can do this thing where they sort of try to dig in themselves for vulnerability.
Or someone else.
Yeah, or someone else to start doing that. Which, yeah, and then I've just also been in so many of these moments where someone is like, I don't actually want to show you what's really going on in me right now. I don't feel comfortable in doing that. And it's just such a visceral relaxation in hearing something like that. Like, oh yeah, there you are. And like, and it's like, oh, it's the truth, and it's a boundary, and it's very likely quite vulnerable to say that in a very real way. So that it also,
especially if you're under that belief that you're supposed to go somewhere.
Yeah, actually. Yeah, I tend to talk about this more as telling the truth or showing up than as vulnerability. But there is a vulnerability in that, I guess. That there's, I was reminded again of this Game of Thrones quote when you were talking about what vulnerability is. It's from episode 1, so you don't have to see the whole thing if you haven't. It's very simply that you have to be afraid first to be courageous. If there's no fear, then it's not courage. Then it's just whatever. And it seems to be a bit similar with vulnerability. It's not vulnerable unless there is fear to overcome.
Yeah, something at stake.
Yeah. So how do you practice?
I think the best practice is to make mistakes. Like to not avoid the challenging your shame and then having all the stuff happen and then try to figure out why did all that happen. I think my specific practice that makes the most sense for this that I've done in my life for many, many years is like whenever I've been in a situation that unfolded in a way that I didn't like, I like use my whole daydreaming machinery to make the situation as alive in me as possible, and then I go through it in slow motion and think about, or like try to relive where were there real choice points that I could have done differently. And usually it's like when I perceived something and I interpreted it in a way that wasn't actually helpful or correct. And like those little, it often feels like something that just happens, but they are choices that we make very, very fast. I think it's about like unraveling what happened afterwards is a really good way to practice. Exposing yourself to human interaction and then figuring out what happened.
Sounds a bit like I was talking to Ernest, whom you know, a few weeks ago about his work with the work of Byron Katie. It sounds like your own version of that when I hear you now. So going into like what were the beliefs in the situation, or like do I still hold beliefs about what happened here, and can I transform them into something else? Ish.
Yeah, I don't know much about her stuff.
I think for me, like I have some kind of resistance to doing that, or like that was what came up when you were speaking. I had this like, it reminds me of when I replay embarrassing scenes from my past, sort of on automation somehow, and it's just holding myself in suffering. That's not what I hear that you're doing, but I can just feel my resistance in that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it's a way that I figured out how to repurpose that mechanism in me. Instead of looking backwards and triggering shame, doing the same thing and looking forwards with a problem-solving kind of frame instead, or like discovering how do I make that not happen again, but being careful not to shame myself, because that doesn't help at all.
Yeah. That does seem to be the key in a lot of this work, to
Mm.
not choose the path of shame when when there's awareness. Because I think that would be my practice with this, is to it's a new way of saying it for me, and I'm not sure if this is how I've actually always done it, but it makes sense for me these days. That it's like I become aware, and then something new is possible in the present moment.
Mm.
And what I at least can see that I've done a lot in the past is to shame myself in those moments for not already having done it, rather than seeing the opportunity of like, oh, I can do something new now. I can actually say what it's like now. It's a gift. But instead, I've often gone down like a path of like, oh, but I just did something wrong, and now I need to contract even more because I can see that it was wrong.
Mm.
So something with this, like the lightness of seeing there's an alternative here. An alternative introduces itself, and it's not always there. I am not always aware that I can do things differently. So,
No, I mean, it's interesting to hear that, because there's like a thing with this practice that, like, the structure of it when I do it over time is usually that it's like there's like a particular, well, one way that I use it is with specific triggers. When I get triggered by something, then I try to figure out why did I contract around that thing, and to look what are my choices before that and in that, and then figure that kind of out, or get an idea at least. And then the next time something similar happens, it usually happens the same way again. But but now that I look at it, I get a better idea. Like I can compare two instances and get a better sense. And then when it happens again, I have three, and I'm quicker to figure out why did that happen, and I start to get like a more embodied sense. And I find that, I don't know, like if they're like sufficiently close in time, these trigger events, on maybe the fifth ish, like fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh time it happens, the choice is there in real time, instead of like realizing afterwards when it's too late. I'm already, because like, even when if it's funny on the fourth time where it's like I see the thing just behind me, and I'm like, but it's too late, and I'm contracted in a trigger, and I'm like stuck. Um,
yeah.
but then, so it's not like, oh, now I get it, and then it's possible, but it's like a time bound repetition thing.
Yeah.
I think I'm mildly, I don't know if I'm triggered, but there's like a speed in me now. I think I went too far into a fantasy and I lost connection with you.
Welcome back.
Thanks.
Mm. Mm.
It's a little bit of sadness and fear.
Yeah, did get a sense of something brief, like right now. Like I think there is like
I don't want to be a person who gets triggered. I feel aggression around that.
don't want to be a person who gets triggered. What does that mean for you?
I hear two different questions. I don't know which one you mean. What does it mean to get triggered? Like what is that? Or what does it mean for me to not want to be such a person?
I guess it's like wanting to know why it matters.
Sounds like a slight freeze. Like backing away, hiding. I think it's like I just want to be big, big and great and skillful and impressive. And being triggered is not that.
Mm.
I think it's just I want to be, well, it's not, I think all of those things are means to an end, to be close with people, like being allowed to exist as I am, except if I'm triggered.
Yeah. I think I
I think
was
it's
like,
also because that particular thing is then I'm stepping out of connection. I lose a lot of freedom.
and is it like then it's harder to trust that you're wanted?
More or less impossible, I think. I usually freeze up quite a lot when I trigger.
Mm. Yeah, I think I was just at this not wanting to be someone who gets triggered.
Yeah, that's quite different than not wanting to be triggered. It's also some narcissism there.
Harsh word. It's a
Uh,
harsh
it's,
word.
yeah, I guess in popular culture, but not in my vocabulary. Most people are quite narcissistic. It's like being oriented around your impression rather than around like the embodied being.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah, and I'm trying to sort of find how this is in myself. And I think I had this like I would prefer to not get triggered much, or like to be triggered less. And there is something deeply embarrassing for me in being triggered in public. Like there's a lot of shame connected to that. And then interestingly, like unless I'm in some kind of personal attachment drama with people very close to me, I don't generally mind much. when others are triggered doesn't seem to create, like, it's not that I leave you because you get slightly triggered now, or like, and that's similar with most people, I think, that I meet in some kind of trigger. So it's like I'm apparently holding myself as if I should be better. Yeah.
I do. I don't think I even think that's a bad thing or wrong. I do want to have high aspirations. I just want to also not shame myself for not fulfilling them. And I think it's detrimental to have high aspirations for others. Like, that doesn't lead anywhere, really. But I do think everyone should have high aspirations for themselves.
How is it for you now? Like, I have tension in my solar plexus.
So, like, it's like I'm a little bit pushed into myself. Maybe. It's like a slightly higher, my sense of control is here. Not quite relaxed. How's your solar plexus?
Still quite tense. Like, yeah, some kind of like intense contraction, and it's curious because it's like almost like it's definitely the thing that stands out in my experience. And there's not a lot else than that. I don't have words for my experience. I think there's some kind of caretaking kind of thing going on in me. And I'm like, are you okay? Are you okay with this being recorded? Um, um,
Feels maybe a bit off topic, which is transpired, or it's a demonstration of vulnerability, or I don't know. I have a sense that I will be allowed to watch it and decide whether it's seen by anyone else. So it feels, I don't feel afraid. I think even if you were to post it, I wouldn't feel afraid. Yeah. I don't know. Quite, it's not usually done publicly on the internet, but it's not unusual for these things to happen and be exposed in front of people, or like that's what we do.
That's what we do. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's like I partially really like this state shift or whatever we call it, into, well, I don't know if it's a demonstration of anything, but there's something shifted clearly.
I'm quite curious to see the recording and see if I can spot what happened, or like.
Mm. And then it's a bit hard to put the right words on it, and there's a bit of lag because there's something I wanted to say a while back, and then we sort of went through your exploration for a while. But there's something that came up when you first sort of showed up with this, like, oh, I think this thing that just happened was a bit fast, or I disappeared a bit.
Mm.
And there was this sense of some kind of slight tensing up in me that's like that it seems to come simply from just caring about our relationship, and it just came up in that moment that like some kind of vigilance around, now I should be on guard, and I don't know why it came up, but it feels good to say it. I feel my breath relaxing as I say it. Hmm. Hmm.
A lot of history playing out in my inner world.
Yeah. Hmm.
Feels good to hear that our relationship is important to you.
Hmm.
Yeah. Some kind of like not wanting you to feel vigilant.
Yeah, I'm not with that right now. It's more of a, just feels a bit intense, I think. Now there's some kind of like, yeah, I'm a bit surprised with sort of my own state shift right now. I feel sort of hot and like something is at stake. Also quite nice. Mm. Yeah, I think it's the other side of the vigilance. Mm. Mm.
think there's a way in which I could drop into now like an exploration of what's happening here, what's happening there, and like it feels outside of the format of what we're doing.
Yeah. Mm. Mm. Yeah, I feel well, what I just did for myself now was to make a bookmark in my state somehow. That there's something that feels young in a way that I really like in relation to. Whereas like I feel quite a lot more shy and sort of, well, vulnerable. But I enjoy it. And yeah, that is not exactly what we are planning to do in this call. Mm. Hopefully a good example for someone of what we're talking about. Maybe.
Big question in everyone is like, is this skillful? Is this
What the fuck are they doing? Yeah. Maybe this is a good place to end this one. Or do you have we already did a wrap up, right? That was what we were trying to do.
a long time ago? We did a new wrap up, I think. I think this time the wrap up is that it's a never ending journey of developing skills. And we stay in these practices partly because we keep practicing. And it's still, well, I see it in you and I feel it in me. Big shifts, big changes. A lot. Having a lot simpler lives than we did some years ago.
Yeah, and I think that's the importance of it, right? That it actually, like, well, it's nice to be in the practice spaces and find deep intimacy with, well, often strangers. And yeah, I want to practice there so I can show up more with the people I love and are around in my everyday life.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's like that's a whole topic in and of itself. The unnaturalness of the practice, of like going so deeply into intimacy with people you have no stakes with, no friend, no, like not real friendship, or like not necessarily real friendship. No bonds, no no time to establish real trust, but we're like leaning into a format and a frame to practice something. And how important it is to not confuse that intimacy with real intimacy built on trust and mutual stakes.
Yeah, and commitment.
Mm.
Yeah. Mm. All right. Should we end it here?
Let's end it here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm.